Oh, hey, Julius, you there?
I, I can I can I can hear you, Albert. I can barely hear you.
Oh, wait, you know what? Don't worry. I'll beam you over. Hang on a second.
What? No, no, Albert, don't! No!
Oh, Dandelo. This is the One Player Podcast, episode 338. Does anybody know an engineer? Oh boy, that's not good. Well, I guess I'll be going solo again this time. This week, I'm talking about the game Captain's Log, Star Trek Captain's Log. It's a role-playing game published by Modiphius, and it's based on Star Trek. It's a solo game specifically for one player. It's a journaling type game, and it is bigger and epic. It's not one of these small journaling games I've described before. This is one where you could play an ongoing campaign over many sessions. I have been really excited for this one. I'm a Star Trek fan. I really liked Next Generation. Well, that show that went on for 7 seasons, and Deep Space Nine and Voyager. I liked all 3 of those a lot. When I first moved to San Francisco, I was watching them regularly because I didn't know anybody there yet. So I was hanging out at home watching a lot of TV, and Star Trek was on like every night of the week. So that was great. That didn't last too long. Once I started doing stuff and meeting people, then things changed. But I sure enjoyed that time of Star Trek. Actually, it might have even stopped faster. It stopped when I moved into my own place and no longer had a TV. Alright, so these shows are a little harder to do solo for some reason. When you're having 2 people, dialogue is more back and forth than when you're doing it by yourself. It comes out better, but we'll try. Let's start at the beginning. This is the summary. So this is a Star Trek role-playing game, as I said. It's a solitaire game. It's based on an existing Star Trek role-playing game by Modiphius, which is multiplayer. And my understanding is it uses similar mechanics, but it is entirely standalone game, and it is not exactly the same. In part because you're playing solo, there's no game master or anything like that. It's set in the Star Trek universe. If you don't know what that is, I suggest you go research that. It's a show that's set in the future, in Earth's history, depending which series you're watching. It's around 2300, I think. So about 400 years from now. The future is bright and positive and all this stuff. There's actually a number of series. The original Star Trek, I think, came out in the 60s. I remember watching that in syndication and enjoying it, but it always looked like an old show from what I recall. Then in the 80s, in the late 80s, Star Trek Next Generation came out, and it was a reboot of that show. It did really well, and other Star Treks came out, and it has been really successful. There's been 5 or 6 series at least, right? Cartoons, movies, comics, so on and so forth. So this is a role-playing game to put you into that universe, playing as a captain of a starship, or another character in a starship. The name is Captain's Log, but you don't have to be a captain. That's just a reference to Star Trek. Episodes always beginning with the Captain's Log or ending with the Captain's Log. So anyway, that's the summary of the game. Probably a little long-winded. The components. So the game brings a book. It's just a single book. It's about 300 and something pages. 300, just a little over 300, 320 or so. So it's hefty. It's a small size book. It's not like the large books like D&D. It's like maybe an A5 size, so half a sheet of paper in height and width. Like, what is that? 6.5 by 8.5, something like that. I'm not gonna measure it. It's a book. One thing they did, it's kind of neat. It's gimmicky. They made 5 different covers. Each cover represents a different Star Trek series. So there's a cover for the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and another one. I don't remember which one. There might be. I think there's only 4. The covers look different. They're different colors. Like I have the Next Generation, which is red. I don't remember color. I think original series might be yellow or blue, and the style looks a little different, reminiscent of that series, of the style of that series. Other than the fact that the cover is different, front and back, the insides of the book are exactly the same. So it does not matter which version you're buying. They all have the same exact text and art and everything inside. It's just the cover. It's just purely aesthetics. It's a neat touch and kind of gimmicky. I mentioned I picked up the Next Generation because that's my favorite series. But it wasn't my favorite looking cover. I kind of wanted to get a different one. I don't remember which one, honestly, right now. But I went with this one anyway. It is also available as a PDF if you don't buy the physical book. So it's available. It's pretty cheap right now if you look online. I think it's like $30 or something like that. Maybe 35. Relatively cheap. I think it was a $50 book when I bought it retail. I don't see a price on here, so I can't say for sure. So yeah, not a lot of components that come with it. The book, and that's it. You'll have to supply some other components, whatever you're journaling on, a notebook, a computer, a voice recorder, whatever you want, and some dice. This system uses D20s only. I think you really only need one. You could use two. When you're rolling, a lot of times you're doing two rolls, so I guess two D20s would be nice. But I just rolled them one sequentially, twice, and it was just fine. Rules. Okay, so so this game is the book is pretty thick. There are a lot of rules in here. I got it really excited, started reading from the beginning, and quickly lost momentum. The first third of the book or so is telling you about the Star Trek universe and how you can be able to be a captain and do stuff, and then it starts getting into the different series of Star Trek and the different roles that there are, and maybe something about the different races and whatnot. But this kind of goes on in a way that it feels like it's about to tell you something. It never feels like it's actually telling me something. It's all very tabular too, though. It's not the best thing to have at the beginning of the book. It's handy as a reference. If you're wondering, how does there's a section about scientific terms and how to kind of do a technobabble when you're playing a game. You don't have to know a lot of deep scientific stuff for a made-up, sci-fi show. Science that doesn't actually exist or work today. So how do you describe this stuff? And it kind of gives you some advice on it and some words that get used in the show and whatnot. It talks about, there's sections on hologram technology and propulsion and the different technologies. There's section on the different eras, talking about the different types of ships they might have had and the aliens it encountered and that sort of thing. The different types of missions that you might play in. Again, it's all giving you a lot of information about the universe without anything about mechanics whatsoever. I found this a little confusing. And it's not a surprise. In talking about the rules, I'm also telling you about what I think on it, and not quite the gameplay yet, but maybe jumping into it. It's all gonna get kind of mixed in because this is a role-playing game. It's all one book, so it's hard to talk about the rules without talking about the actual game and whatnot. So that's how it is. But yeah, so that first third is all just information. As I kept reading this, I kept feeling like, man, but how does it work? This doesn't make any sense. I'm still kind of confused. And I kept waiting and waiting and waiting for the rules. I think in the end, I kind of skipped a little bit of that section and just jumped forward. The next section is, what they called it here, reporting for duty. And I'm going to jump to it. This is now, I think, about making your character and how characters work and whatnot. And it tells you about the different attributes and the traits and that you have. It doesn't tell you anything about mechanically how they work, just what they are and what they represent. It does tell you, like, there's ranges of them and describes what the ranges might imply. And again, it kind of feels like it's giving information, but I still felt lost reading all this. I kind of felt like, soon it's going to tell me how this stuff works. What these numbers mean. Is this a 7 good or bad or whatever, right? Am I rolling a d6 against this? I was just totally lost. So reading this was kind of frustrating, but it's about making the characters, and I kind of went through it. Eventually, I gave up. I found this really hard to read. So I said, I'm just going to make a character and just forget trying to understand these rules and whatnot. I think I'll just pick it up as I go along. So I jumped into the section about making a character, and I went through and rolled up my character. There's 2 different ways they suggest. One is make a very detailed character with a backstory from the beginning, or just wing it and, make it up as you go along, which is just fine. If you can do that, just roll up your basic attributes, give yourself maybe a name, maybe even not that, and as you're playing, you could fill in the details, and that's actually a pretty interesting way to play, because you're filling in the details. You don't know a lot about yourself necessarily, because it hasn't mattered yet, but when something comes up and you have an encounter with somebody, say, you know what, I think I know this person from my history, and this person is a bartender, so maybe when I was back at the academy, I used to hang out at this one bar a lot or something. And so you start developing your backstory, and when I was at the academy, I was a pilot. Maybe it's relevant to what I'm working on now in the game we're playing, the story I'm developing. So you start creating those backstories. I decided not to do that because already being confused, I just felt like too much. I took the deep dive and made a character. It goes into a lot of detail about who you are, what type of planet you're from. Are you from a primary planet of a civilization, or maybe one of their secondary planets or colony or what. You roll up for what type of society it might have, and all sorts of different things. You roll up your upbringing, information about your upbringing, how are you raised and whatnot. It's a lot of rolling on tables with a d20 to get information. This part was really fun and really interesting. I really enjoyed coming up with a random character this way. You're going to go through... I would jump through the book and jump to the different summary section. And, we'll get to this part. But it is kind of a hard book to navigate for some reason. The contents and whatnot are not the best. So, anyway, you're going to make your character. You're going to come up with their backstory, their education, what your species is, all this different stuff. And when you're done with this, you have a detailed information about a character, their rank, their attributes, and whatnot. You still don't really know how to use these things, but there you go. I found this part actually was really fun. I really enjoyed making a character and coming up with their story and whatnot and rolling things up and being surprised. And actually, as I was doing this, I kind of came up at the same time, based on the character I was rolling up, it gave me ideas about what type of position they're at now and whatnot, because this game gives you a ton of information, but just about no real guidance in starting. This is a really hard game to start. That's the thing, actually, yeah. It's going to say, okay, make up your character now. So who are you and where are you, right? Start your first mission. Go do it. And it may have your role in a couple tables if you're lost, but, without more information, you don't know if you're on a planet or a starship or what. And that could be overwhelming. But as I made my character, I came up with a story. It's a female captain. She is in a starbase, sort of like a Deep Space Nine station, where there is a number of civilizations, about 8 or 9, in that general vicinity, and many of them all developed warp technology right around the same time. So there's a lot of friction between those civilizations. Plus, they're trying to... Starfleet, who I'm part of, is trying to keep the other civilizations that haven't developed warp technology in the dark until it comes up naturally because of that prime directive of theirs. So I came up with this setting, and it felt right, full of opportunity for intrigue and adventures and all sorts of stuff. I came up with 9 different race names and their planets and whatnot, and wrote that up. Actually, I found online on DriveThruRPG some documents about how to, or not about how to, but random names for aliens, civilizations, or planets, or whatever. And I used that to come up with names. There's a little bit of rolling or choosing and then tweaking things just to suit my taste. Anyway, I went through and I made my character, and I had a lot of fun doing that. It was a little bit of a struggle. Once I was ready to start, I then looked on there is a section for rolling up a random mission, but it's kind of vague. It's the sort of thing where you roll a die and it'll give you a couple phrases. And it'll give you complications and whatnot. So you roll and you may come up with your first mission is let's see here. Let me pick one. Rescue miners, and it's an escort and evacuation type mission. It's rescue miners. What does that actually mean? The rest of that is up to me pretty much. I can make it something very simple, like, oh, there's miners stuck in an asteroid, or I could say, oh, there's this planet, and I visit the planet, and there's a collapse, and the mines are collapsing, but the planet, the government tends not to care about the miners, and so now I need to rescue them, but it goes against the planet's government's wishes or something. Anything I want themed around the rescue miners. And I suppose I could even choose, it's not miners that mine, it's miners as young children that need rescuing for some reason. Or maybe the miners aren't trapped, but they were kidnapped, or, whatever. These are just very vague, simple seeds of ideas that you could then develop and go with. And you don't even have to develop them fully at first. You kind of start, and as you go, things do happen, and you could add complications and other random things and figure out what the story is as you go. Where are we? We were talking about the rules, and I talked about how I made the character. I'm starting to get into how a story develops, right? But let's talk about the rules themselves. The rule book, I really am disappointed with this rule book, honestly. I found it as I already told you, it's very confusing. I'm reading, always feeling lost, reading like, oh, it's going to tell me something soon. It's saying, oh, and then you'll do this sort of stuff or that sort of stuff, but never with any real concrete information, just with hints of information. Oh, we're going to tell you something soon. Don't you worry. Just wait up here. In the meantime, be excited about this. Wait till we tell you about it. And that's what it felt like to me. I don't know if others feel that way or not. I wonder if that's just me. But it was a very frustrating book to read. Once I started playing, I again felt a lot of frustration. The rule book is terribly organized. I found that there's a lot of jumping back and forth through different sections to find the right thing. Finding where the rules are about rolling for events is in one place and tables are another place. And I'm not getting into tons and tons of details about it. But here's the thing. The table of contents and the index are pretty useless. The table of contents, it's each, the book is divided into like, I don't know, 6 or 7 sections. 6 sections. Each section is made up of multiple chapters. The table of content is about the sections and it has things like reporting for duty, rules of play, your home among the stars, right? So it kind of gives you an idea. And then when you jump to that section, you'll find the different chapters. But there isn't any, and then in there it'll tell you, oh, here's the name of the chapters. But I found it really hard to navigate and find what I'm looking for. So I didn't find that very useful. The table, the index at the back is even worse. Basically each section, subsection, I guess, in a chapter, as you're reading through, it's divided into different sections, not the big sections, but the little sections, and they all have headings. And sometimes those sections are divided into smaller sections. That is what the table of contents is just those titles, word for word. So it could be hard to find something if you're not sure what you're looking for. Let me give you an example here. So, selecting an era of play. If I don't know if I want to know, what are the different eras of play, I might look under era, or I might look under series or something. But no, it's actually under selecting era of play. And that's super useful. How about if I want to know how to end my game once I'm finished my session, and your sessions are basically like Star Trek episodes, so they go through a dramatic structure similar to a Star Trek episode, a TV show series episode. And I want to know how I'm supposed to end the episode. Wonder what you would look for. The ending, closing, finishing. Well, in fact, it's under the Fanatic Finale, which means I have to go look under the T for the. That makes no sense. At least it could have been Fantastic Finale or just maybe Finale, but not the Fantastic Finale. And there's a lot of that where it's, unless you know exactly what the section is called, it might be hard to find it in this index. So I ended up not using it. What I ended up doing was buying a bunch of little plastic, like the bookmarks that you stick on pages, the little sticky papers, and just filling my book with all the places I found interesting. And I have a few different colors, so like I know the yellow's a lot of the rules reference, and I think whatever this lavender color is for different tables. So if I'm trying to find a rule, I'll start flipping through the yellow ones until I find the right yellow one that I need. Not super efficient. A little frustrating, maybe a lot frustrating, really. But honestly, once you got going, you don't need to reference it as much. The first game, a lot. The first series or campaign that you play, the first episode you play through, you definitely will reference it. I think the more and more you play, it's really not a complex game, so it's not super hard to internalize those rules. So I've really complained about this game a lot, but there are definitely things I like. The theme is great. I think it did a good job of capturing the feeling of a Star Trek episode. It very much feels like a show where it starts and there's an opening and then things happen and there's a twist and whatnot, comes to a nice conclusion. The game plays a lot like that, and it's just fun. It's nice. The book is full of Star Trek information. again, I found it hard to read and hard to absorb, but there is a lot of information there. So if you don't know a whole lot about the setting, it does kind of guide you into giving you a little bit of a summary of each of the series and what they're kind of like, to give you a feel for what you might like. And then I think they want you to then go and do a little research on your own and watch some of the shows to kind of get a feel for what it's supposed to be like. Really, this is a game for a person that already knows they like Star Trek and is familiar with the concept and how the show works. Even if you only know one Star Trek series, you could play that series. And I think these rules do a good job of recreating the feel of that as a show specifically. My notes say, oh my gosh, these rules are a mess. I think it was, if not written by an AI, it was at least guided by an AI. It does actually have that feeling. It does, when you read something posted by an AI, a lot of times you don't feel like it's giving you information. It's going to give you a very generic summary. It has a lot of that feel. And I honestly, I don't know that it was written with an AI, but I think maybe an AI at least gave some input here, because it just does not feel deeply thought into. Like I'm sorry to say, but it doesn't feel like they put a ton of effort into it. Even though there's a ton of information, ton of content, I don't know what it lacks something. At least that's what I found. I hate talking bad about a game, but yeah, there it is. The index is painfully alphabetical. Yeah, I got into that already. Yeah, that's it. That's all the notes I wrote, actually. So as I said, it does feel like you're playing an episode. Once I got going, I had a ton of fun, and I really enjoyed the game, and I enjoyed the story that was developing. I definitely, and I only played one show through one episode, so I'm sure there's things I'm missing. But it was really confusing, but I was really enjoying the process of coming up with that story and developing it, and it was really exciting thinking about all these different races and whatnot. The process of coming up with my world is really cool, of coming up with the different species and the factions between them and whatnot. That was just so satisfying and so interesting, and it generally felt like a good Star Trek episode. As I played it, it is designed to be played as an episode, so you're going to play and you're going to do a number of challenges where basically you roll against your attributes and you succeed or you fail. And if you succeed, hey, that's great, you keep writing more about it. If you fail, that may throw some sort of twist that affects what you're trying to do, and now what your plans were are not going to work, so things may change. You'll keep going through until you've done, say, 3 to 5 challenges, and whether you succeeded or failed doesn't matter. That will be the first scene. You're going to go through and play, I think it was 3 scenes. So in the end, I guess you do about 15. And the number's not exact. I think they say 3 to 5. But if you felt like you needed a 6th one because you hadn't quite wrapped up that chapter, you could keep going. That's fine. It's about telling the story, and that's what matters. I found that as I was playing, I was doing stuff, and then I do a roll and it didn't work out the way I wanted. Well, suddenly that's going to change my story, and I had to compensate for it by adding in a new twist, or maybe something forced me to roll up a twist I wasn't expecting, that sort of thing. And the game does do that. It does have you roll up unexpected stuff once in a while. So it was really interesting to see that story develop, and it was fun to come up with ways to compensate for it and change my story. There's a couple of things I didn't enjoy about it, though. I was too successful. It feels like it's weighted so that you're going to succeed more often than you fail. Your attributes tend to be, I think, between, I'd say 10 and 14, and you're rolling a d20, and if you roll lower than your attribute, you succeeded. So if you have a 10, which is kind of low, your odds are 50-50 that you succeed. If you have 14, they're pretty good, you can succeed. Plus, you're actually rolling twice, and if you get at least one success, you succeeded. So you're definitely going to get things going your way most of the time, and you're just going to keep playing and telling the story. So it felt more like a story than a game. Say Iron Sworn, where there you fail more often, and then you have to come up with a workaround for what you thought was going to happen, because now things failed and not working out differently. There's less of that here. However, there are other ways to come up with twists. If you succeed with both dice, then you gain advantage. One of the things you could do with advantage is spend it to throw in a twist, just because twists are fun, honestly. They really are, actually. So So you're going to play through, your story's going to evolve, it's going to be a lot of fun, and then you're going to reach the finale. I kind of fudged the finale and didn't worry about it too much, just because. But again, that process of making my story was awesome. I kind of wish I had a ring binder for storing this, or disc binders, I guess. Not like the big binders that, snap open and have 3 rings on it, but the ones with the little plastic discs where you could slide the papers in and out and just push them in. And then I guess the ring binder would work too, but I don't like them as much. Just those would be really good for this game, just because I found that as I was playing and I suddenly encounter a new race or a new character that may end up being a major villain I want to have, I kind of want to, instead of writing it down in my narrative as I'm playing, I kind of want to get a whole new sheet and maybe make a sheet about this person, just even if it's just 1 or 2 sentences and the rest of the page is blank, or about the race, and put it in a separate section that I could always refer to whenever I want to find, oh yeah, what's this person like, or yeah, who does this race get along with or not get along with. It'd be nice to have as a reference. Thinking about that and coming up with all these different races and stories and interactions is really fun, and the idea of organizing them in a way that'd be easy to reference, I thought was super cool. So I just did it in a regular notebook. I wish I hadn't, but that's okay. The gameplay, okay, I told you about the gameplay quickly, right? 3 scenes, each scene, actually not scenes, 3, there could be multiple scenes in okay, I'm sorry, they're not 3 scenes, but 3 acts. Your story is divided into 3 acts. Each act could have multiple scenes. But again, think of like a TV show where a bunch of stuff happens. There's a bunch of different scenes. Maybe you're on your ship on the bridge and you're in engineering, then you're on a planet, and suddenly the story reaches a breaking point or a commercial, and it's a good point to break. That would be the end of your first act. Then you start your next act after your commercial, and now things are probably, a lot of times they're different. Maybe the challenge has stepped up a bit or something, and now you play through these new scenes through the second act, where it always feels like there's a shift. And the book actually does have some information on dramatic 3-act structures and the shifts that those go through. So it does have actually guidance on how to do that, where like an opening and a climax and whatnot. It talks about all that stuff. So I did find that interesting and useful. So anyway, at this point I think I've talked enough. I hope you've got an idea what I thought about the game. I really enjoyed the game a lot. I really think it's super cool, but it is also very, very frustrating to learn and play. I did not like I love the production value of the book and the look. I did not like reading it, and I found it hard to use. But the setting is fantastic, and the mechanics are very simple. And once you could get through the book and playing, I think it'll be a very rewarding game. There's a lot of potential. There's also, I didn't mention it, but there's also, I mentioned there is another role-playing game that they have called Star Trek. Star Trek Missions, maybe? I don't remember the name. Honestly, I haven't played it. There's a whole bunch of source books for that. And you can actually, if you wanted to get more information about some specific area of the Star Trek universe, there are Star Trek source books you could reference. Though honestly, the best place to get more information is to watch the shows. If you want to play a Next Generation type episode or game, go watch Next Generation, watch a bunch of episodes and get a feel for that way. That is Star Trek Captain's Log. All right, I need to get back to that teleport and see if I could get this guy out of there. Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. We love feedback, so we love hearing from you. You can reach me at julius@oneplayerpodcast.com or JLBird on BGG, and Albert can be reached at albert@oneplayerpodcast.com or Fractaloon on BGG. Our website is oneplayerpodcast.com with the number 1, and we're also on Twitter at oneplayerpodcast. The intro music is copyright Angus, can be found at jamendo.com. The transition music is copyright by Dan Elduce Pancaldi, whose page is at donpancaldi.com. The One Player Podcast is protected under a Creative Commons share-alike license. Thanks for listening.